Okay, so I've seen a few people talking about this lately. You always need to shoot at base ISO. And someone who was curious if it was true actually said, show me. So here I am. Before I dive in, I'm Joe. I've been a commercial photographer and video director for over 15 years. I've worked with major brands, built full studio setups, and now I help people like you navigate the waters of opening your own studio, whether it's photo or video. So back to the topic at hand. Is base or native ISO a must? Well, that's a great question. And the answer, it might surprise you. For the uninitiated, ISO is like the gain knob on a mixer, but for light. For all you audiophiles, that makes sense. For everyone else, it's kind of like turning up the knob on a radio. Base ISO is where your sensor performs at its best. Cleanest image, widest dynamic range. But that doesn't mean you have to shoot there. Here's the real order of operations. The three main parts of the exposure triangle. Aperture for your look, shutter for your motion, then ISO to enhance exposure. Now, here's the myth. You must stay at base ISO or at one of your dual native ISOs at all times. So people underexpose just to stay at base. But by doing that, it can actually introduce more noise, especially in your shadows. So what's the real secret? Well, in the pro world, we often use something called ETTR, expose to the right. And I say often because ETTR isn't a throne to rest your camera on. It's just a really effective tool in a lot of situations. So how do we use it? Simple. We expose the sensor to more light. More light equals more signal. More signal, less noise. And that gives you more flexibility in post, with or without sticking to your base ISO. Now, you might be thinking, I've got my aperture and shutter, so I just crank up the ISO, overexpose, and pull it back in post, right? That'll actually make noise more visible, especially in your shadows, or it could be in your highlights, depending on the environment. So what should you do? Well, here's the secret. There's a fourth piece to this three-piece puzzle, and I already gave you the hint, your environment. So just turn up the volume on your set. That's right, turn up the lights after you've dialed in your exposure. If you're outdoors, let in more of that natural sun by opening up your ND filter. Photographers, this applies to you too. So in short, base ISO and ETTR, they're tools, not thrones. Expose for your story, not your camera spec sheet. And if you're just starting out, remember this. Even the greats started with blown highlights and noisy shadows, and they kept on shooting anyway.